Welcome everyone to the February 15th Southern Fried DNN User Group meeting. We are kicking off now our online meeting. If you are able to join us live, we'd love to see you. Fill our peanut gallery. We have our screens off to the side where we have videos on, and we talk and kind of watch the chat to see what good questions and, more importantly, what good heckling we can all receive while sharing tips, tricks, and information from the DNN community all around DNN, for DNN, and again, for that DNN community. Last week, we had the wonderful time of being able to experience camaraderie and sessions and training and tips with the DNN Summit 2024 online DNN Community Conference. And so we just completed that Wednesday and Thursday last week, finished up the week with being able to then watch the replays of videos and sessions. And here today, we're going to do a bit of a recap and touch on some of the sessions I noted as being some of the most interesting to me, either with some new topics or some fresh perspectives, or really just some timely good tips and information. And we're going to go through several of those today. If you were not able to attend DNN Summit, then you can look forward certainly to registering and signing up for next year. One of the benefits is that even if you're not able to attend that couple of days of the DNN Summit here in 2024, you have the rest of 2024 to watch the replays. And so we'll be touching on some of those here today. But as we start off on every Southern Fried DNN User Group meeting, we're going to talk just a little bit about community announcements and activities that have happened in the community since the last meeting, in always the third Thursday of every month. So that third Thursday of January we met. I will jump over to begin with to the dnncommunity.org website. One of the things, if you haven't been there recently, to note is that they did do a theme refresh, and it's very exciting. It's a clean, modern look. A lot of the content is in the same places. Some things have moved around or merged to new locations, but overall, it's a beautiful DNN feeling theme. Everything matches the DNN colors, the header, the footer. There's some unique looking elements, and I think as a community, we can be very proud of the way things look and the way things have been refreshed. And there's always continuing work going on in the DNN community website. And as we commonly have a theme to give back, to get involved, to participate, that's one of the places where everyone in the DNN community can reach out and connect with Will Stroll and the other folks who are managing the DNNcommunity.org website to make improvements and make additions. One thing I noted myself last week is that the videos section has a large library of videos, but many of the Southern Fried videos are not listed there. And we have a collection of videos from past conferences on our Southern Fried DNN usergroup.com website in our video section. So I reached out to Will, asked for rights and permissions to be able to work in the video section. So soon I'll be working to post links and get videos posted over onto the DNN community website as, small contribution that I can do to help improve the content here and make sure that something that I might know about or have access to is present for everyone in the DNN community. So I encourage everyone to think about how they can contribute, even if they're just reading articles and replying to forum or blog questions. All of those things are very helpful activities. There was a post just a few hours ago for DNN localizations and language packs that one of the things that we know Peter Donker works with is working with internationalization or localization languages for the DNN system. And so he just posted an article with some updates there showing you all the things that are baked in with other languages other than English is his phrasing there. And that's good. Here, myself, I don't often get into it, but when I have, it's been useful to know that we've got all these language packs a click and a setting away. So those are a couple of articles that have been posted recently. Nothing else new since last month with the release of latest version 9.13.2. And overall, there have been some recommendations to always make sure that you're able to update to one of the latest versions. But here specifically with the 9.13.2, there were some updates around the newer version of the file manager to make sure that if you had been updating and you have anything newer than, let's say, 9.11, that you please go ahead and update to 9.13.2, because there were some updates of not necessarily security issues, but errors that were in the file manager that can create problems for some. And getting up to 9.13.2 helps solve those issues. At that point, though, a little bit further, I'm talking, right at level or above what I know off the top of my head. Daniel, do you want to jump in to give any other suggestions or tips around the 9.13.2 release?
Sure. I mean, it's a minor
It is.
patch release, so there's nothing really special. It's minor bug fixes and dependency updates. Nothing unexpected there.
All right. Well, then we are through the DNN community and ecosystem notes that I had on my plate to mention. I'll pass it out to the group just to see if anyone else has announcements or community goings on that you feel like we should bring on screen and mention here for February. No.
Ryan, along the lines of that language stuff that I didn't realize Peter had posted a blog. I appreciate you pointing that out. But I noticed today that solution is now kind of already moved over to the community site. So it's under resources there, but I think the menu is too tall for you to actually get to it. Oh, when you're not logged in. Yeah. There you go. So
got you.
Yeah.
All right. Good deal. Well, we might, if we get lucky, invite Peter or someone on to talk a little more about it in a future SoFri meeting. So we'll see.
Yeah, we're actually hoping to. I'm looking at you, Daniel Velatis, but
Yes.
hoping to do kind of a walkthrough at some point when things get a little bit more doable for Daniel, to do a walkthrough of the DNN translator project that Peter wrote a while back, and a lot of people use that, but it's a pretty little known tool out there that a lot of people don't even know exists, but it's a tool to help you do your own language packs or manage existing language packs for DNN or third-party extensions as well. So
interesting. Yeah, that would be interesting.
It's a very powerful tool, very cool, but even though there's documentation and things like that, it's still would be new to a lot of people. So it'd be nice to get a nice walkthrough. Several people have requested it in the community already. So
nice. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, David and Daniel, for jumping in on some additional community information. Let's jump right into the main topic for the night, which is spending some time talking about the sessions that were really interesting, really moving information, either, like you were saying before, new perspectives or new information, things that are timely and topical. And really, we saw a lot of the same speakers that we know and love. They visit us here on SoFri. We have several of them logged in as well here tonight. So we'll ask them to speak just a little bit as I go through these different items. But what we're going to do is we're going to just do a walkthrough of DNN Summit. My hope here is several things. Number one, to give additional thanks and appreciation to our speakers that spend time presenting at DNN Summit. It takes time to prepare these presentations, to prepare the slide decks, to pull the knowledge and information together, to put it into a 40 to 50-minute session. Anyone can ramble on for 2 hours, but condensing it down to bullet points that people are going to absorb and is going to be entertaining and is going to keep attention takes effort. And so we are thoroughly appreciative and thankful to all of our speakers who come and spend time at DNN Summit and any of our user groups, whether we're talking about here at SoFri online or when we're in person. We're spending time putting this information together in the DNN community website. It takes effort, and people spend time and energy, and we can't say thank you enough for the materials they put together. So we're going to go through and talk about some of my favorites that I had a chance to either watch all of and participate in, or just got enough of the synopsis that I really want to come back and go through those. Without further ado, we are talking about, again, the DNN Summit Virtual Conference. We had a packed schedule with 3 tracks available at each one of the session times. So even if you were paying close attention, there's no way you could watch everything all in the 2-day set of sessions. So you pick and choose the ones you want to go and see while you're there, and then you appreciate the ability to come back later and watch videos after the fact. We are, with the DNN Summit system or conference, still inside of the Hopin system. But one thing different from last year is that Hopin has been purchased by RingCentral. So you'll notice that the domain names and the URLs and things have changed over to RingCentral. And when you're logging in, you may get kicked back over to RingCentral related pages when you're getting into Hopin. I'm sure that'll be smoothed out over the next few years. But here for us, it was kind of a shift. But once you got logged in, everything was really pretty much the same, generally the same inside of the Hopin system. There were some nice improvements and additions that I saw. One that if you participated in the videos, in the conference sessions where people were talking in the chat, there was one nice new feature where the moderators were able to mark a question that came in the chat, and that text would go up on screen as part of the video recording. So if someone did off screen, because the chat isn't part of the video recording, if they asked a question and that got brought into the conversation, if the moderator was paying attention, they could bring that text on screen, and it makes for a nice cohesive video recording to watch back later and get that conversation from. Well, the way that we're going to do this is, if there's time permitting, we may spend some time watching a couple of snippets of video, but I have done enough presentations, both knowing my internet connection and stability, and how even if you plan well, things are going to go awry. So I have screenshots. We're going to go through a slide deck of screenshots because that's definitely more reliable at this point, without question. And if we have some of the presenters here, we might have them talk a little bit about their sessions as I mentioned them, and then also go back and watch some of the video clips if there's something specific that we want to try and go and grab. So as I was saying, anyone who's paid and attended the DNN Summit Conference, you now have a year that you can watch these videos. One of the things you'll notice if you come back to the website is that RingCentral logo is prominent. You can see the DNN Summit is ended and that the event is now over. But it does show you that the replays are available until February 9th, 2025. So at this point, and actually when the new event occurs, if it occurs before that, it might end a couple of days sooner than this. But at this point, you can sign back into DNN Summit with your same username and password, and you can jump right into your sessions that you want to watch. Now, one thing that happens when you log in is you will be presented with the survey, the exit survey, the first time that you log into the system. And there are really only a couple of questions. One, did you enjoy DNN Summit? Would you recommend it to someone else? And number 2, how was the Hopin system and did it work okay? After that, the second questions are open-ended. What would you recommend for next year? What sessions would you like to see? What did you have a problem with? Any of those other things you can put into a couple of different questions and then submit, and you're done. The DNN Summit board, the association, and those of us who are pitching in to help put on these conferences really appreciate that feedback. So even if you put in just a couple of words of suggestions of what you'd like to see in the future, it makes a big difference for us to not just start from scratch, but to know some things that people might be interested in for next year. So fill out that survey if you can, please. And then I'm going to jump ahead because I know that David needs to run in just a minute and jump off screen. So I'll come back to the first session that I was going to kind of point out from. I'm going to go through chronologically Wednesday through Thursday. And I'm not touching on every single session, but I definitely am touching on a lot of them. But let's jump over to David, which is the third one on this list, which actually I grabbed the wrong slide because really, David, you presented at 2 or 3 different sessions. There were sessions on Wednesday and sessions on Thursday. The one that I was kind of highlighting in some screenshots to pull out here was that you did a session where you were presenting and talking about the new aperture theme for DNN 10 and some of the things that come around that. And you described that, you know, people who attended that session were going to get a sneak peek at DNN 10 and that you were going to do a deep dive into the theme and some of the elements that are there and how to use it as a base for customizing and making new themes. So with that as a introduction, David, do you want to talk for just a minute or two? I know that we did a session recently in SoFri where we talked a little bit about it, but you kind of had even more to present or show at Summit.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. It was a cool idea of a session that kind of got added at the last minute. And I found out very quickly at an hour in that I really needed 3 hours to really do a deep dive for that. But we were able to get through at least the first part of it enough to at least kind of tell people the intent of the theme and what some of the possibilities would be. But I think as a follow on to that, I'm going to have to do some more videos, you know, just to go a little deeper for those that are interested, because the new theme not only will it be the default theme for DNN 10, both templates that you would choose there, but it also really can be used as a starting point for custom theme development. And it's kind of a new way of doing it, I guess, that's not been seen so far in the community that I know of, and using modern front end tooling and so forth. So kind of excited to start showing people some of the ins and outs of it, because we really didn't get to dive too deep into the kind of mini built-in framework that's in there for styling and so forth.
Yeah, you started to.
Yeah.
You started to, and I agree. I was thinking the same thing, that it's not an approach that in my team, it's not an approach that Fred has used when he's working through things. It's not the same way that we would take the very wonderful NV Quick theme and start working with it to customize things. It's a different approach, and whether that becomes tutorials or sessions or small articles, I think there's a lot to show people.
Yeah, I think so. It's gonna be nice to see, because I think we could do quite a bit of content out there to help people, you know, leverage that and evolve it and make it better as we move forward. So, and the cool thing is the very little dependencies in a DNN sense, so we don't have to manage or maintain something like we've had to do in the past. And that was kind of one of the big things we want to do, is remove those old dependencies that are virtually impossible to manage without breaking without breaking changes being introduced. So it gives us something that not only will be workable and usable out of the box and good, it'll also be able to evolve as ideas come along and so forth over the coming years. So
David, I apologize if it was mentioned clearly and I just missed it. But who's behind the design of the aperture style and colors and sensibility? Was there a solid design mock-up and proof and then worked with, or was it working with those elements and then using what they could? whose name can we ascribe to this? Is this all something that you can say is your baby and you're proud of it, or were there 10 people involved in it?
Interesting framing of the question there, Ryan. I think the best answer, and I actually did cover it in the session. So for those of you that did attend and have a ticket there, go watch kind of the beginning of it. And I did set the stage for it there. But the design was not, hey, let's design a new theme, because that's what often happens. It was really approaching it from a content strategy standpoint first, and then designing to meet that strategy. So what you find in the default template experience in DNN 10 is very catered and strategic for the new user and helping onboard them as a new DNN user. So that's kind of what it is, and that's something that has been missing for a while now. We had the wonderful awesome cycles there for a while,
Right.
which is a great example of a full-blown website before, and that was done really well as well. But this is a little more, okay, we've been kind of neglecting this area for a while. Let's go ahead and be strategic on this. So the design has really been dictated by that. And of course,
Okay.
the trying to follow the color palette and so forth of DNN, but in a new way and not normal, what you would expect with the blue and red.
Yeah. Yeah. What I was kind of leaning towards was a leading description that to me this has been a content and a development first design instead of a designer first. Oh, you got to develop around what the designer wants kind of approach. And I think that is a very clean way to approach something, especially if others are going to be reusing it and following it as a method. And so I thought that was very interesting.
I'm a big fan of content first because it informs the design, and then you can kind of undergird what the strategy or the content is for a site. And often it's hard to do in practice in the world, because like people don't want to think strategically about their content. They just want a pre-design, and then they're going to try to figure out what content goes into those
What content
holes,
goes there?
Yeah, it's like that in the end doesn't create a cohesive experience. Now this is just a one pager, so it's not a full website, so it's not quite that complicated, but there is a clear intent and flow of the content there.
All right. Well, that was one example of a session that you can go back and really dig into that David put together. That was the very beginning of the conference, really the midday on Wednesday. Let's go back a couple here, and I'm going to get to the start of the day, and with some of the first sessions that I wanted to point out. Also here, Dustin, you're on. Feel free to jump in with comments and conversation points, and the same thing for everyone else. We really have a roundtable here of folks who were present at DNN Summit and also who spoke and presented at DNN Summit. So it's a good collection that I have here online with us. So please come in and off of mic to chime in. I really, didn't start off by talking about the sponsors and some of the different things around the DNN Summit in structure, but I will mention that the sponsors and the expo booths and any of the video recordings that the sponsors might have had, all of those things are not part of the replay. So unfortunately, even if More Creative has a very funny, entertaining video clip for you to go and watch in the expo booth when we weren't hanging out there talking to people, you can't see those. That's not part of the replay or long-term storage of the DNN of the hop-in system for DNN Summit. But to help share things that weren't part of the recordings, maybe part of the conversations or the chat or the polls or the community engagement. I will mention that we have here from the DNN Association, we have Mark Buelsing is here. Dustin, you were one of the moderators. We've got we've got folks here who participated in the summit, so I'm encouraging everyone to jump in and interrupt me as we're going through, especially if it's entertaining or a perfect point to add. So one of the first sessions that I wanted to talk about was an AI related session, because that is probably one of the newer set of topics that we had this year that we haven't had in the past. And if you look back, while we've been talking about machine learning for a little while, we've known these kinds of things were coming. Really, the explosion of AI related anything has been within the last 12 to 14, 16 months. And you see that reflected in the topics that were presented, were pitched for DNN Summit, and then were delivered. So here, Dale Warner gave a session in the very beginning of the day on Wednesday on AI-powered visualization within DNN. And what I appreciated about his approach is that he said that what he was going to do was explain, give a simple target of what they were going to do in the session, but that he was going to build and execute everything right there in those 40 minutes. And that is a tall order to fill when you have the cameras rolling and you're going to both present and then hope something that comes together. And it did very well. So his point was that he wanted to use AI tools within a DNN website, within a presentation in DNN, to do charting, graphing, mapping related activities. And he wanted AI generated code to run and support him. He wanted to use AI as tools for doing his development work. And he wanted to use that as an example of how to teach you to use AI for assistance in your daily development tasks. Now, these were very specific examples that ended up going into things like an HTML module, but they are very good examples of using free tools to do repetitive or complex tasks and write code and then see how that code turned out. And one of my favorite things is that he didn't just work on that code once or twice. He then would say, okay, let's run that. He'd get code out of ChatGPT, put it into DNN, look at it and go, oh, we're getting there, but it's not quite. We also want to add this feature. So he'd bring it back into ChatGPT and he would say, okay, that's close, but now we need to X, Y, Z. And he just iterated through the process. So he really walked you through starting from nothing and having ChatGPT build some basic code with some complex JavaScript in it to do map pointing and things, so that you would have a Google map and you would click on that map to drop a pin pointer, and then it would reload the code with that pin pointer based on that lat longe. So it's doing some calls back and forth to services and bringing them back. Again, it's an interesting example because the main point of the example was to show you how it can be done. Once you watch this session, then you're left thinking, where can I use this in the future? How can I do similar things to this? So I wanted to point this out. This is one of 2 AI sessions that I wanted to point out today, but there were 3 or 4 AI related sessions in DNN Summit for us to watch in replay. Second session that I wanted to point out was one of the ones that I did. This one was about evoke and DNN instance upgrades, migrations, tips and tricks. This is the second or third time that I've done this specific topic. And every year we lightly dance around the idea or the concept of teaching people how to do evoke downgrades. And I mention in these sessions that I don't really call them downgrades. I like to call them a side grade, because you're not downgrading from DNN 9 to DNN 8 or evoke 9 to DNN 8. You are moving sideways to a parallel version. Depending on where you are, those version numbers can be a little bit wonky, but you get to the right point and they are side to side numbers even. And it's tedious and it's complicated, but it's doable. You're not going to press a button and switch from one to the other. But one of the points that I mentioned, especially when we had some of, I'll interrupt myself in my interruption. One of the things that we talk about at DNN Summit whenever we're together in person or we're online is that we will ask people in the room, how many of you is this your first DNN conference? Is this your first DNN community event? And when we're physically in person, about 50% of the audience raises their hands and says it's their first DNN convention, it's their first community event, it's their first anything. So when we have 120, 100 to 120 people, 50 people there are brand new and have never been involved in a community event before. That's a fantastic statistic. Here at DNN Summit 2024, we had, at one point I was looking online, we had about 88 people online. So we had more than that in registrations, but having 88 people actively involved in doing things. Granted, it was on a survey poll. I didn't ask a room of people and see their hands go up. So it is stats based on who bothered to submit the survey poll. But this year, it was about 25% were brand new. It was their first event. Anyways, I mentioned that because some of the folks we were talking to from the state of California were mentioning that many of the state's DNN existing systems are in the process of moving away from DNN because they're moving away from Evoke. And if anyone got my message then, and if anyone's watching this back now or here listening to this, one of the things I plead is not to throw away your past investment. Companies have spent time in training. There's time in human capital. Then you've spent time in you've spent money in physical output for all of the years you've been supporting and improving and adding to your DNN instance. I really encourage everyone to please stay on platform. If you want something new, stay on platform. If you don't want to work with Evoke any longer, that's an understandable decision. Evoke is necessary for some customers. Evoke is also not necessary for some customers. It really depends on what you're doing with the system. And I encourage people to please stay on system. Let's consider a side grade from Evoke to community rather than spend all that time losing and throwing away what you've invested in for so many years. So that was a really big part of this conversation. And so I mentioned it today because that's a bigger message that I think people need to hear out in the community, that you don't need to just leave Evoke. You can easily switch gears, tediously, but accomplishable, switch gears from Evoke to DNN community. And that was a big part of the conversation that we had that particular day, along with other tips and migration and upgrade bits of information. If you have DNN Sharp modules installed, never ever upgrade to DNN 9.4. Just skip it. You need to get to 5. What to upgrade first, what to upgrade second. That's a lot of what goes into a presentation like this whenever I give it, and then give some updates as I go for things that are new. So the third session that I wanted to point out was the one from David, and I put the wrong slide up to begin with. This was the first session that he did in the morning, but the afternoon session was the DNN 10 theme, and the name of that theme is Aperture, if you haven't already caught that. The next session that I wanted to point out was the one from Mitchell Sellers. He gave an overall security, an overall system health and system performance type of presentation. It's the type of training and tips that Mitch is famous for within the DNN community back in DNN 3, before we were posting articles and blogs directly on a site like DNN community. Many of us were learning how to upgrade DNN or understand how things worked because we read Mitch's blogs. We read the articles that he put together. And this is a session that's very much like that. He spent time going through several different points of things, and one that I'll mention is around security headers. He mentioned several different items that you put into your web config or you set in IIS to help improve overall security and improve the display of your footprint of your DNN instance to communications with security headers. So he put that in there. He also talked about Telerik, of course. He talked about upgrades, different tips of things that you could do. To me, this is the type of session that you watch with your notepad out or your links, and you start making notes and copying text of things that you're going to do in a bullet list to your own DNN instances as soon as the conference is done. Okay, I think that is the end of Wednesday's set of sessions that I wanted to mention. There are plenty of other sessions that I didn't touch base on that are all very interesting and worth talking about. So if I pick 4 out of 9 or 10 that occurred on a day, there's plenty more to go back and watch. Let's let the schedule load here, and I'll point out one of them. There are things, for instance, let's see, Wednesday, okay. Things, for instance, like the CSS animations session. That was done by Paul Gilbert. I don't know if you remember, but Paul came to SoFri last year and he gave a presentation of the same content, and it was really enjoyable, a lot of fun. And so if you didn't catch that and you didn't go to DNN Summit, then you can always come take a look at that on our SoFri website. That is posted from one of last year's videos. Another one that I didn't talk about, or another pair that I didn't talk about in depth, were data related. That Dawn, you did one on pushing customers towards modern data management and modern data. I'm going to have you talk about another session in just a few minutes, but I thought I'd give you a shout out or a point here. I thought this was a great idea because it's really about pulling teeth to get customers to change the way they've always been doing things if modern options are available.
Oh boy, howdy. It really is pulling teeth. A lot of the clients, and especially we do a number of government sites, and a lot of the people will say, I really have to have a PDF. I have to have a form. There's better ways of doing things. And they have their back end tools. They bought expensive systems from other software vendors, but they don't realize that the website itself could do a lot of the same functions that these back-end systems can do. And for that matter, especially since there's the intermediary of the clerk or some staff person that has to take the information that was given on a form and then re-enter it in to this other software system. Why not just put it in directly? And that was the topic, and that was how I explained it in the presentation.
Yep. In a similar data kind of focus, we had a SQL commands one. Dustin, you want to talk about that for just a second? What did you enjoy seeing out of that? You, in our team, you focus on the DNN database and modules and the data format and structure of, I don't know, very pretty modules that sometimes have very messy data structures in DNN. Did this session have some good information?
Absolutely. He talked a lot about, to start off just using the SQL console window in the persona bar for being able to run your queries. Talked about, a query to be able to list out all the tables in the database so you can look for the right things if you don't already know users and the user associated roles and the ASP.NET tables associations and how it works, where you find the password and stuff like that. I tried to throw in this nice little query that we have to search every non-end text field in all the tables of a database to find a given string. But the chat in Hopin doesn't allow for file posting. And when I tried to put the code, it was too many lines. It said no. So I referenced people reaching out to us if they need to do something like that, to be able to find everywhere that the old brand name is if somebody's rebranding, or being able to find every HTML module that has JPEGs in it if they're switching over to WebP or something like that.
Don, maybe you heard. Are you hearing Dustin say that he wants to come on SoFri and make a presentation of that code next month? Really?
That's what I heard.
That was amazing, Dustin.
Thank you, Dustin. All right.
Real.
As I look back, I realize it kind of did sound like that, didn't it? Well, see, but I beat you to it because I kind of horned my way in on Chris's presentation. He had it down pretty pretty
Exactly.
solidly to like about a half hour, he said. So, we ended up
Yeah.
having a good long session of just taking questions in the chat, answering specific questions
Yeah.
about, where would I find this? What's the difference between an inner join and an outer join? So I kind of jumped in on that and took some of the questions as I noticed that looked like he was typing something off to the side in another window. So yeah, it was really good. The session was great. He had a lot of great points, and then a good kind of a round table at the end with all the participants, and I think we all
Well,
learned a lot of good things.
Dustin, I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
All right, I'll have to get started on that then. I gotta make up my slides. Ryan, you can teach me your ways and
I'll make the slides
put
for you.
on a
No
good
worries.
presentation.
Yeah, you can wing it,
Yeah.
man.
Well,
Really good.
I said to Chris at the beginning of the session that I had, every year thought, wow, it would be great, and I wish that more people talked about it. I almost only ever once before had seen a session that was specifically about SQL, and so I've thought many years about doing it, but I don't have the guts. So maybe starting off on a SoFri would help kind of break the ice, and it wouldn't be the first time in front of such a large audience. Not that our audiences aren't large, but not DNN Summit size, I would think.
live.
Can
Yeah.
ease into it there.
So, yeah, absolutely. There you go. That's a good way to put it.
Well, that was going to be my closing point about those last two sessions we talked about, is that they're talking about data, and they're talking about planning and organizing and working with data. And we have at SoFri and at DNN Summits, we have developer courses often where we'll talk about building something, but it is few and far between when we talk about data. And even though in structured content, we'll talk about starting data first on certain kinds of things. But it's nice to have a deep dive on some
Yeah.
SQL.
I think that ends up leading to people, understand the .NET side of developing a module, but since no one ever trains you on how to do SQL, you kind of have to figure that out on your own. And sure, Googling it will get you 90% of the way there, but then everybody's doing things a little bit differently, their own way, instead of everybody in the community kind of having, a set procedural type concept of here's what you do for these type of tables, here's what you do for these type of tables, and so that if anybody ever has to come behind you, as a developer, you got to think about the next man and how bad it's going to be for him to work on your code. So putting in comments and in store procedures and things like that, because I also find that a lot of module developers don't make store procedures. They will just put together code in the .NET and then run it, and that's much harder, I think, to come behind and decompile and figure out what actually happens when you hit the save button on a given form.
Yeah.
I got a different angle, if I may,
Sure.
a little different slant to all of that. When I saw that I was in the same time zone or same time frame as Chris's, time slot as Chris's, I wanted to see Chris's SQL talk as well.
Yeah.
Then I went and looked up Chris, and it found out that Chris lives in Rockford, Illinois. I live in Elgin, Illinois, and Elgin, Illinois is just 20 minutes southeast of Rockford, and so I jumped into the chat thing, sent a direct message to Chris telling him as much. And I'm not in Elgin right now. I'm down in Florida right now. But when I get back in April after the eclipse, I will grab a coffee with Chris and we'll talk. So a key thing about the seminar is the conference is that you meet people. And you meet people that have like interests, and who knows what might happen from there. We might do some collaboration down the road, or we may just grab a coffee and leave it at that. But that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we had been in person, I would have been in Michael's ear, all weekend long, and bugging him at DNN After Dark, and dinners and all that.
Yep.
Because yeah, it's very rare to meet another DNN enthusiast who is also a SQL enthusiast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's a good kind of mid review point that we can describe that, you know, a lot of what goes on at DNN Summit is training and information and sessions, but in between sessions, you get to chat with people either in the chat system or in direct messaging. And certainly when we're in person at DNN Summits in person, the last in person was February 2020, right before the pandemic really hit everywhere. We were all in Florida, in Orlando. And in the future, we hope to be next year in person. We're still working through the details on that. And if so, we may be in Las Vegas, which is one of the target areas that has been looked at several times before because it's easy to fly into. It's built around conferences of large and small sizes, and it's very easy for us to find room blocks to structure around. So it is, you know, a primary place that we're looking at and discussing, but that it's even more that when you're in person, you make these connections and you talk with people, whether you're sitting down at the lunch table or dark sessions, you start talking to people and you find out they also dealt with this weird problem with their application pool. And what did you do over here? And oh, all I really work on is JPEGs and images, but I love using DNN for this and this. You make connections and you talk with people. 50% of them you run across often are brand new first time people to the conference. The other 50% are all the rest of us who come repeatedly and really enjoy those connections, and are able to, fortunate enough to be able to keep coming back to conferences again and again.
Yeah, and you can meet people with complementary talents. You know, I'm good at SQL, but I am not a .NET developer. I'm not a theme builder. So, you know, if it were just me, Ryan kind of fills in a couple of those other positions, and we've got the guy that does our themes for us. But if I were alone, yeah, I would need to go to conventions to meet other, other parts of the puzzle that I would need to really work with DNN, at a high level.
Wow. So that is a good point and sales pitch for participate in the DNN community, participate in the DNN Summit and the conferences, because it is it's something that you might be you're taking a few days out of your business schedule to do, but there are plenty of opportunities for reward back to you in the sessions and the people you meet. So second day, Thursday, I'll kick off with one of the sessions that was from David Rodriguez. He has really built several different connectors and elements for DNN for authentication around authenticating with Azure, either Azure B2B or Azure B2C authentication. I've worked with him a couple of times to help do some specific client solutions, and he knows more about Azure than I ever hope to know, or possibly want to know about really some in-depth things in Azure. And so one of the sessions that he put together was really some tips and steps in using Azure for deployment of DNN instances and preparing a whole prep package to be able to roll out DNN instances on Azure, and some of the different pitfalls and things that you have to watch for and put together if you're going to have something that is going to run smoothly, scale up smoothly, and overall, it's another example of a session that for me watching through it, I would sit down with a notepad and start taking bullet point notes at every step, because he's really outlining all the things that you need for success when you are rolling out DNN, and you're not going to be doing it on a traditional platform. You're going to be doing it on Azure, possibly as a service instead of a VPS and things. So next session after that, I wanted to point out is back over with Don Gingold again, because we have a range of different types of sessions, and sometimes there are sessions that are theme and design focused. Sometimes there are sessions that are developer focused, and they're talking about code and really getting into some details. I haven't mentioned yet or pointed out, but you know, Cassidy and the 10-Pound Gorilla team do a fantastic job in having a lot of marketing related sessions where they're either talking about ADA compliance or CSS for readability. Those are fantastic sessions. But every summit, there are some sessions that are about real world examples of, here is an example show and tell. Here is a project that was taken from beginning to end, and here's what was involved with it. And that's one that Don went through with he and his wife's site for an Agatha Christie enthusiast related website. And I'll kind of leave it at that, but pass it over to Don to kind of mention. To me, this is a good example of something where you had a need, you know what you wanted to accomplish, and then you went about putting together all of your bullet list items and making a solution with DNN. And it's a great example for people to watch and learn about.
And numerous people here in the meeting and then elsewhere helped me with it because I was trying to find what tools, what extensions I should use to make this happen. And I tried various types of tools. And I explained that actually I've done this presentation a couple of years now, and we've finished it. The site is launched. There are members now that are enjoying the terms that Kate has written, all the definitions, I should say, that she has written for all of the strange terms that you might find if you're busy reading an Agatha Christie mystery, and you come upon a phrase or a historical reference and you don't know what it means. You go to the website, you click on either the book that you're looking at. You can sort by book. You can just type the term in one search box, and it'll give you the list of terms that match that. The big thing, I think, the key takeaway is that there's lots of ways to make things happen, but it was going to be done over DNN, and a lot of people helped in figuring out what it's going to be.
Yeah. I like a session that shows the solution, shows the problem, the thought process behind it, and then what you put together. And even if someone doesn't need those same tools, learning from that process and watching it is something that everyone can enjoy. So I think that if you didn't get a chance to catch this session during DNN Summit, this is a really enjoyable one to sit down and watch for you know, TV show type purpose, for entertainment purpose. You sit down, maybe you're eating lunch, you put this one on. It's a really interesting conversation about where the process led you and what you put together with a website that then is close to your heart and is a personal project, and that makes it even more enjoyable.
And that was a key takeaway, a key intent for people to take away when they came to the session, is that it was inspiring, that I didn't realize I could use this tool to do that thing. That was the intent. So hopefully that came through.
In the chat, some very David-like people are asking questions like, well, what tools did you decide to go with? Why didn't you go ahead and tell us? But you could also say, just watch the replay.
You know, in fact, since Dave was asking some questions about that, early on in it, I was thinking, yeah, okay, what database management kind of DNN itself is a database, right? The web pages, the content on the pages, all of that is developed on a database. But then you have a database on top of that database for storing these historical terms and obscure references, and what would we use for that? And so I asked the question. I had a particular tool, Too Sexy. I considered using Too Sexy for this. And as I'm talking in numerous places, Dave was just starting his DNN Dave video series. And it was perfect timing where he and I worked through it. And I think there's like 4 different videos or 4 or 5 videos that are out there on the DNN Dave channel that we walk through how to build this with using Too Sexy, the templates, Razor Script to build it, and we got pretty far with it. So thanks again for that. That I didn't end up doing that, but it's mostly not because of the tool. It was mostly because of my comfort level with what I could do with it, and how once the experts gave me some pushed me in the right direction, could I take it from there? And with writing, the writing on the wall was writing a whole bunch of Razor Script. And from my perspective, I'm not really good at it. I've gotten better over the time. I've ended up doing a lot of Razor Script over the last year or so, but not for this project. Back then, I said, that's too much for me. I'm going to shift and do something else. I ended up using EasyDNN News, because EasyDNN News is it's articles, it's catalog elements. It fit very nicely, as each article is a what do you call it? Is one of the terms. And so I built it that way. And with the template capability that's built into EasyDNN, I was able to lay it all out fine. So a big thanks to a number of people. I mean, I tried 4 or 5 different platforms to create the database of terms, and I ended up using EasyDNN News. I have been thinking about going back and redoing it in some other tools, now that I feel a little bit more confident in my abilities using those tools. But for today, and that's what I explained in the presentation.
Dustin, did you just hear Don Gingold say that he wanted to make a SoFri presentation where he showed different tools building the same thing different ways and comparing and contrasting the different tools? Oh my gosh, Don, that's so fantastic. Dustin, did you hear him say that?
Absolutely.
That's what I heard too.
I didn't hear that, but okay.
I pretty
He's
much
got to
heard
go
those
before
exact
me,
words.
so that then I can come in and show how I would do it with straight SQL and XMod.
Yes, exactly. See,
tandem session.
That's another tool.
It's a series.
Tandem
it's a series
session.
over the summer.
Yeah.
I think so.
Battling development. 2
Don,
screens.
Don, thanks for we were all on the edge of our seat there. That was thoroughly enjoyable. I think that's a great set of tools as a choice. There's so many things that if you take a well-built article system, that article system can be used to do FAQs, to do glossaries and dictionary definition type things. It can obviously be used for articles. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility when you have a really robust and not overly so robust and well put together article system. So I think that's a great choice to go forward. Well, it is 7:30. I just got a few more items that I want to run through to finish out Thursday's presentation of sessions that I wanted to point out. So let's move on to one with Daniel Valadas. I'm looking at his picture here, and I'm looking at his picture in the video, and the same picture there. Sure. So Daniel, on the developer track, on the complex side of things, one of the sessions that I paid attention to was one where Daniel was talking about testing your extensions, testing the build of what you're putting together, but doing so with unit tests, and that unit tests allow you to more quickly and rapidly repeatably test the same items that you've already identified, so that when you're building new elements and you have those unintended consequences of you break something else over here because you built something new over there, you're going to know about it. And you're going to know about it not because you had to spend effort, but because you did those unit test setup to begin with as you went along, and it made your overall process smarter and easier for you to rely on the work you just did. And so I find that fascinating. And I really enjoyed, Daniel, that you put that session together. So if you want to spend just a couple of minutes, do you want to talk a little bit about what you shared and
Sure.
that session?
And a lot of that boils down to test-driven development. So if you aim to start with tests, right, and you build your tests first and then the code to satisfy them, it makes you discover the architecture you need for easy testing. And it so happens that building such an architecture means that everything is loosely coupled and you can flex your code easier, implement new features easier. It makes you use dependency injection, which is a great thing for extensibility, for maintainability. And yeah, so it's a good idea to start with test-driven development for other reasons than just the tests. And as a bonus, you get everything nicely tested and stable, and you can refactor with confidence. There's a lot of pluses to that. And a lot of people don't do it because they are in the mentality that it takes double the time. And it adds time, of course, but it's something you regain with years. So if you're building something you need to maintain for years, it makes it so that you can refactor with confidence. You're not scared to touch pieces of code because you're going to break everything. And ultimately, on the long term, you save time because there's a bug report and you can just write a test for it. You can enter pieces of code that would be hard to enter by the user interface. One of the examples I give is like e-commerce where you have a bug past payment. Well, you have to do all the steps
To get there.
to get past payment, which includes products, categories, users, customers, and that's very time consuming to get a setup to get to the actual bug. And tests allow you to just enter the code exactly where you need to be. And you can write scenarios exactly as the bug report to find out exactly how it happens and fix that now and forever. So it's really, really cool.
I apologize if you've mentioned either in that session or otherwise when you're talking about this, but with so many of the older DNN core modules that you have helped modernize and bring along, did you go back? Do you spend the time getting unit testing connected to things like that that are so old that didn't start that way?
Yeah,
I'm just my own curiosity on that.
I haven't done it much on the core modules because they are mostly web forms. Um, and web forms was not easy to unit test at all. It's
Yeah.
like, and a lot of those, well, not all, but some of those have all of the logic in the view. So intertwining this and removing the logic from the view is kind of a lot of work. It's much easier to start with tests. However, there's some large projects I worked on where the developer disappeared, but the client bought the source code and wanted to maintain these things. Then yes, so take all this code that is not made for testing and what little piece can I extract to make it testable? And let's do an interface and let's do
Maybe
dependency
it's key
injection. And
components that are breakable
yes,
or tenuous. You
yes,
make a way to test those pieces.
exactly. So like the data access, let me
Yeah.
create an abstraction over this. And now I
Yeah, an
can redo
abstraction.
all my data access works
Right.
without having concerns for everything else, right? And that makes you extract every piece of code that was doing direct data access on higher levels on
Yeah.
more real world high level dependencies, bring them all into the low level dependencies, and you start cleaning the code. And then, well, there's sending emails in gazillion places. Let me create an email service, bring everything in there nicely tested, and you clean the rest of your code.
Yeah.
And as you progress, you start gaining confidence, and also because it's something you didn't write, it makes you discover the product and what logic
Yeah.
was in place and start
Interesting.
refactoring.
Almost like you're in that situation, you're just building tiny little views into the things that break the most or that you need to test the most. And like you said, it's an abstract. It's
Mhm.
almost like the real thing, but you're testing some valuable things there, doing the best you can with it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that was an excellent session. I'd encourage people to look back through that. Especially if you are a module developer or someone who's interested in getting into it, and you want to write your own little pieces and know that unit testing is something that can become more reliable for you to proceed forward. Spend the time now and then proceed forward with confidence. Then this is a great session that introduces the concept.
And I had two sessions, one about dependency injection, one about testing, unit
Yep.
testing and integration testing. They kind of go hand in hand. And if you watch both replays, you should start with the dependency injection one.
Yes.
And then the other one completes it, basically.
One of the you may think that's enjoyable or not, but one of the reasons why I chose this one to talk about was that this one makes sense to me, and I understand this one. The other dependency injection, I'm just watching, and that one doesn't make as much sense to me. I get that we're going to have variables of our variables that are in a variable, so that we're going to call them.
Yep.
It's maybe like looking at the third turn around a Rubik's Cube. I can get it conceptually, but I can't see it. So yeah, this
Yeah,
this one we can talk about.
the simple explanation is that it allows you to inject behavior. So if you have something that should send an email, you don't care how it sends, or even higher level, it needs to send a notification. So instead of like hard coding sending an email, you say someone is going to provide me the code of sending a notification.
Yeah.
So now your module that you said someone provides it to me is not concerned about sending it. And you
Right.
can replace, you can inject different behaviors, send an email, send an SMS, send a phone call, or whatever. So it
Or have one email
untangles, it
solution
really makes a
swapped out
loose
for another
coupling.
one very easily.
Yeah, so you can easily change behaviors just by injecting different things, and that plugs into testing a lot because in testing, you can inject a fake. I don't want, when I test this, to process a payment.
Yeah.
So I can inject a fake payment provider. I can provide a fake notification service.
Yeah.
I don't want to
hard-coded
send
fail
emails
and a
when I'm testing.
hard-coded pass. Yeah.
Yeah, so it allows a lot of flexibility.
Interesting. Well, the last session that I wanted to call attention to was another one of the AI sessions. A late entry into speaking at DNN Summit this year. Ash Prasad, former DNN corporate employee and well-known figure in the security side of DNN and a face of DNN for a number of years. Ash Prasad was back to really talk about AI and using and incorporating AI into the DNN CK editor. He was doing some projects and seeing that CK editor out in the in the environment of CK editor standalone, apart from DNN, that it had some abilities to connect into OpenAI for integration, so that he could tie into it, and he got into whether he could do that with inside of DNN and get that connected fairly easily. So this session was both a walkthrough and a presentation of him dabbling and working within CK Editor in DNN to get OpenAI going with inside of that. And it was a good session in that he showed the concept, and then he put the elements of it together in DNN and kind of showed off what it could do, and then talked about it. So it kind of wraps up the examples of sessions that we had inside of DNN Summit, where I wanted to call out a range or a collection of different types of things. I started with an AI session. We're finishing with an AI session because when you come to these conferences, you're going to see new topics. You're going to see refreshes of some topics you've seen 2 or 3 different times before. You're always going to see something about upgrades and security. There's always something to talk about new for upgrades and security. But you're guaranteed to see some new sessions from new faces and old faces alike who are presenting some new concepts. And so we had 3 or 4 different AI related sessions, and this one is no slouch. It's really an enjoyable presentation. If we get a chance, we may reach out to Ash and have him come and give us an update version of this later in the year for SoFri. I asked, and he said yes sometime. So we'll take that and go from there. So that's the end of the sessions that I wanted to point out. I really couldn't spend time on everyone in an hour of time, and here I'm at an hour and 15. There are notable people that I just didn't get to. There were several different Too Sexy related sessions, either in the use of modules or the people. Daniel Metler spent some time talking about images and the image resizer and the image processors that are both in 2Sexy and in DNN, and that are available, and some things you can do with them. That session made me think of a topic that I could present on. So I mentioned to David, so I'll be giving a session later in the year that is about taking the built-in DNN image resizer and doing all the different kinds of things that you can do with it that you might not realize are built in and right there and available if you have a vanilla instance of DNN. There are sessions from Cassidy. You know, I did not exclude you know, Cassidy and her team on purpose. They had 6, 7 different sessions that were all fantastic. They're marketing related. They're talking about user engagement. Dustin, I'm trying to recall if it was you or if it was Jeff that was on one of the sessions where they were talking about style and presentation in improving people's engagement. And so was that you or was it Jeff?
Oh, Jeff.
That was Jeff. Okay, yeah. He was talking about it afterwards, saying, you know, that being readable does make me want to read it. You know, font size and font coloring, and making it too small and tight makes me not want to read it. So I just scroll on by. So then the question's begged, why bother having that block of text there at all? Have as little text as possible to start a conversation and continue the conversation, not deliver a dictionary full of content for someone to read, you know, from front to bottom before they give you a call for an estimate or ask you about your services. So there were a lot of really good marketing points and a lot of good things that come from the 10-pound folks. And you know, if we do another session where we go into even more in depth, then I would definitely pick 1 or 2 of those to point or call out to. Anybody else in the online group with us here tonight want to mention any other sessions that you particularly enjoyed or anything that we missed before I kind of start to wrap up?
And not sessions, but the rest of the hop-in interface, the expo section, jumping on to the various booths and talking to folks was a great thing. Now, you can't replay those, you're right,
Yep.
but it was a huge benefit of being part of the summit, is to be able to jump onto an expo, say hi, toss out a problem. And several of people that are here in our meeting tonight know about an issue that I've been working on with offsite storage using Azure, and a problem that I've crept up, and I brought it up to a few people, and we had some great ideas, and it turns out that we've found the problem. And it turns out,
okay. Well, let me dive into that then. So the expos, that's the sponsor booths. So imagine it being at a conference, and you can walk into the reception area, and there are tables for all of the sponsors to sit out in a booth. That's what they have in a digital format in the expo section of Hopin. And I think after the first night at the more creative booth, we had kind of opened it up to just do roundtable and start talking, and we were all kind of gathering together and shooting the breeze. And so Dawn, you talked there, and I started to mention a few suggestions about file permissions and security systems that might be on Azure, checking your files as you go back and forth. And from 10-pound,
Mark Saunders jumped in.
Mark jumped in, and he started thinking through the problem and asking some really good identifying questions to say, well, hold on. Are we talking about thousands of records in one folder? And you're like, yes. Well, are we also talking about this in Azure? Yes. And he started honing in on the problem from his side of experience. And within 15 minutes of talking about it, it was clear he was onto some ideas that you needed to test. So
exactly.
You're saying that after that night, you tested that, and that direction was a good lead?
So that was very much a good lead. A number of people. Now, we had a little talk at your booth. I went and talked to Mitchell at his booth.
Yep.
I basically tossed it around to a couple of different people, and between the several of us, we kept going back and forth, and that's the beauty of the conference, is that you have the opportunity when everyone's got their everyone's thinking about DNN instances and different ways that they can help each other. They are happy to toss out ideas. And so Mark's idea is clearing out the log. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in the log, clear that out. Still didn't fix the problem, but it eliminated a potential path to go down,
Right.
which is perfect. Permissions were not an issue, but again, eliminated an issue that we could have spent weeks on, but didn't have to because we looked at it and eliminated it. So again, all these great minds tossing out ideas helps tremendously. What it ended up being is that on a when you first install the DNN Azure system on a small site, you have a few files, no problem. Because what it does is every time it moves a file or uploads a file, it eliminates the directory structure. So it needs to recreate it.
Rebuild it. Yes.
And rebuilding it is no problem if you got a dozen files. If you've got 50 gig of files, it takes a long time. And that's what the issue is. And so what happened is I tossed this idea out, what's going on, to Mitch Sellers, and he and I talked after the conference, but we wouldn't have talked if it wasn't that we were there at the conference together. So he saw the problem. He put the problem report, the bug report, up on GitHub, and now we're moving towards the solution.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a great place to end the meat of the SoFri meeting here tonight. As a recap for DNN Summit, the content of DNN Summit is present for everyone who paid and attended DNN Summit 2024. And if you didn't go to DNN Summit, but you need to convince your boss, you need to talk to people to say, hey, I want to do DNN Summit 2025. And people might say, well, what's the benefit? What are you going to get out of it? What training are you going to take? There are sessions. We've gone through plenty of those sessions, but often it's those interactions with the other people that you talk with at the conference that are invaluable, that you could not pay for, and it would be impossible to schedule them as a random occurrence of all of these minds and all of these people and all these experiences coming together. And it could be something as simple as saying, oh, by the way, there's this one setting that you can change, and wow, that changes your, that changes your memory problem in your DNN instance, and everything is so much better afterwards. Or it could be a really complex, detailed issue like what Don was describing that he brought to many people in the community. And part of the wonderful benefit of Summit, of SoFri, and the rest of the DNN community at large is that we are all very friendly, engaging, helpful people. There are plenty of other technology platforms where it's cutthroat or people help each other for a price and they don't share and build and help. And that is definitely one of the things that we have benefited from in the DNN community, not just for 2 years or 5 years, but for 20 plus years. And that's why so many of us stay in the community, because there's nothing like it. And that was an awesome success story, Don. Yeah, cheers, cheers, cheers. He raised a glass if you're not seeing it on video. That is it for wrapping up tonight's Southern Fried DNN User Group meeting. Again, we meet the third Thursday of every month. So that puts us in March, squarely at March the 21st as the third Thursday. So we will see you in March, and we'll announce and promote the different session content as we get a little bit closer. You heard us today very seriously locking down future speakers that definitely signed up to do these sessions in the future. But that won't necessarily be March or April. We'll give them out into the summer. But if you have any suggestions for things you'd like to see, speakers you'd like to present, the maker of that one module you love that you've never met in person and you'd love to have them come on and talk about their module, let us know. We will reach out and dog them and get them on here to talk and share the things that they're passionate about. And if you have any other tips or suggestions you want us to cover, let us know, and we'll be glad to get into it. So from here at this point, we'll go ahead and finish the Southern Fried DNN User Group meeting for February 2024. Thank you, everyone who joined us online. Thank you very much for all the comments and participation. Thank you to everyone who's joining us after the fact, watching a replay. We really appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you again next month.
Great session. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, David.
Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Thanks all.